From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. It is Saturday, March the 22nd, 2025. My name is Jack Etkin. Citizens Forum is a kind of Canadian perspective on the news and issues of the day, with the underlying theme of, are we a democracy, really, and do we have the free press that we think we have? My guest today is Ingmar Lee, and Ingmar was, I think I can safely say, an environmental hero here in Victoria, BC. But that was a long time ago. Ingmar, maybe you can say where you are now, what you're up to.
Well, we've been living up here near Bella on what's unfortunately referred to as Denny Island. We're the next island over from Bella on the wild and rugged BC Central Coast. And we moved up here about 20 years ago. Basically, you know, I lived most of my life on Vancouver Island, but was just heartbroken by the ecological devastation and the utter futility of trying to do anything about it. I basically gave up, you know, on the forest fight, and yeah, it was just too soul destroying.
Well, let me ask you a question then. Are you interested at all in getting back into that fight or do you feel it's,
well,
if there was a way forward?
We've you know, back in the day, I was fighting Gordon Campbell, and you couldn't ask for a more disgusting, repulsive adversary, and so that really was great. And I sort of had some you know, encouragement when we saw the rise of the John Horgan NDP. But since then, we've seen not only Horgan, who was much lauded and undeservedly so, I thought, on his recent passing. Excuse me, but passing the torch on to David Eby, I kind of had some enthusiasm for David Eby based on his career at the BC Civil Liberties Association. I thought he was pretty effective there, but he just turned into the worst corporate lackey toady. And, you know, it was full bore logging and sending in the RCM pigs to beat up the people, you know, the enormous outpouring of the wide diversity of Canadian people to protect, like Fairy Creek, the last intact primeval watershed on Vancouver Island, basically, and, you know, just clubbing them down with brutal police brutality and all that sort of thing. And then, you know, finally looking at the NDP leadership race, like I found out about Anjali Appadurai, who I found very refreshing and very exciting as a young, fresh, sophisticated, articulate candidate for the NDP leadership race. And then, you know, of course, right on schedule, when she began to actually appear to be a threat to David Eby, they threw her right under the bus and brought in the old guard to make sure she was stamped out and destroyed. And so David Eby didn't even get to run, you know. Now, I can't hear you, Jack.
Sorry. This is when BC NDP Premier John Horgan resigned. There was, after 6 or 7 years in government, there was going to be a race to replace him. And it looked like David Eby, who's the current NDP premier here in British Columbia, it looked like David Eby was going to win until a complete not outsider, because she'd been in the party for a long time, but a climate change activist, an environmental activist, entered the race, and that was Anjali Appadurai. And just as you said, she was going to win the race. She was going to be the premier of British Columbia. An environment.
Thousands of people like me, you know, like.
Yes.
I
We
paid,
all rejoined the party to
yeah,
support her.
$20, you know. I mean, my dad was an NDPer. He ran in 3 federal elections. I was raised as an NDPer, and I was eager to get back into it. But, you know, when I saw what happened, and they actually terminated my vote. Like,
Yes.
being a member, I was not able to vote. So I demanded my $20 back, or $15 or whatever. And I had to go through a fight like hell to get my money back. Because, you know, they terminated my membership because when they phoned me, they found out that I was going to vote for her. You know, it was just incredible. So yeah, David Eby is just a scumbag in my opinion, and got nothing but disgust for him.
And it should be mentioned that David Eby is currently the Premier of British Columbia, right? He won in what I consider and what I think Ingmar considers to be a completely phony race. The NDP leadership, seeing that Anjali Appadurai was going to beat David Eby in the race for the party leadership, basically kicked her out of the party and did it with the full support of the corporate media.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the democracy we have. So you say you wanted to talk a bit about what you call the demise of Justin Trudeau, and then followed by the demise now, it seems, of Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, Justin Trudeau was this, you know, was another one of those, oh, great, you know, after Stephen Harper, I thought, oh, great, you know, Justin Trudeau, young, fresh, you know, prime minister. It didn't take very long before he just utterly disgusted me. And, you know, there's just scandal after scandal, the blackface. Then he fired his First Nations attorney general over because he wanted to do some corrupt deal with SNC Lavalin, you know, just went and fired her in the most clumsy and pathetic way, and just one scandal after another, and then, you know, going and buying the dirty oil pipeline, you know, like that pipeline. It must be indelibly etched in Justin Trudeau's legacy. That's the only thing that Justin Trudeau did that he'll be remembered for, and that's the Justin Trudeau dirty oil pipeline that will cause the extinction of the southern resident orcas, and, you know, is guaranteed to have a horrific end. You know, there will be a catastrophic oil spill in the Salish Sea. They've got this veritable tanker traffic jam going on there. They can't fit the big ones under the Second Narrows Bridge, so they're running back and forth with all these little tankers that nobody wants. Like, China's built all these great big super ports, and they want the big ultra large crude carriers, not these little ones that can fit into, you know, the Kinder Morgan terminal. I've always thought that all the development behind you know, the BC ferry terminal there at Tawasin, all that development was ultimately, and, you know, we've seen big swathes of land sliced through Burnaby and you know, the lower mainland. Basically the pipeline is ultimately destined to go there. They're going to get it out of the Port of Vancouver. But yeah, anyway, I was very delighted to see Justin Trudeau so unceremoniously turfed from the party. You know, just absolute kicking and screaming, even though it was clear that everybody hated him. You know, I mean, he had no support whatsoever, and he wanted to drag it out to the end, and would have certainly lost the election to, you know, Pierre Poilievre, like despicable and repulsive as he is. But now that Trudeau's gone, and believe me, don't get me wrong, I've got no love for his replacement. Mark Carney, an investment banker. I mean, is that the best we can do in Canada, is have an investment banker as a leader? I've got nothing good to say, and I don't know anything about Mark Carney, but the one thing that gives me some joy is seeing that Pierre Poilievre has gone from the ascendant to just being a ridiculous caricature. Like when you see EB or when you see Mark Carney and then juxtaposed with Pierre Poilievre, talking tough about Trump, he's just the most flaccid, limp, pathetic excuse for a leader. And, all the bombast and the bluster is just so incredibly phony. And I'm sure that even the most blue in the face, conservative, Trump loving, even Doug Ford thinks he's a joke. I mean, I heard that, I listen to CBC. It's like scratching an infected scab. You can't stop yourself. Like I have to listen to CBC just to see what the dark side thinks. But even Doug Ford doesn't have the time of day for Pierre Poilievre. It's going to be Mark Carney, and to me, that's some sign of relief. I'm not going to go and start. I'm not going to go take my Palestinian flag down off my dock and put up a Canadian flag. But I just, we're going to lose both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre in one fell swoop. So that can only be a good thing.
And you just mentioned your Palestinian flag, so maybe you can comment on what's happening in the disaster that's never ending.
Yeah, well, when they started into the big genocide, which was entirely foreseeable. In fact, when you look at October 7th in a realistic way, you can see that probably most of those 1,200 people that died there were killed by the IDF themselves. You often see the pictures of the entire, the rave parking lot full of hundreds and hundreds of vehicles all burnt to a crisp. That wasn't done by a bunch of guys running across the border with hang gliders and pickup trucks. That was a military assault from a very sophisticated army. The subsequent genocide, I decided to start doing a lot more research because, you always hear people saying, oh, it's so complicated. It's not complicated. I begun my research by reading Ilan Pappé, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. And, that's a pretty good start for anybody who really needs to understand the incredible ethnic cleansing that went on, where 800,000 people, the Zionist defense, Zionist military would show up at, 2 a.m. in a village and blow up a few houses and get everybody out in the town square, shoot all the young men under the age of 30 and leave one avenue of escape for all the rest of the population and just shove them out all the way to Jordan or Syria or Egypt.
You're going back to 1948 now, or that time when Israel was created.
48, and and ever since, we've just seen the entire thing. And now I'm reading a very interesting book right now called Mandate Palestine, and it talks about the British occupation of Palestine after they routed the previous occupiers, the Turks, and how the British, even the colonial administration of Palestine up until they left, and meanwhile the Balfour Declaration, all of the British administration of Palestine could see the insidious and incessant influx of Jewish settlers into Palestine, and just how belligerent and how much trouble that was causing, and all of the unrest and with the various Arab and Christian populations of Palestine, which had formerly lived quite comfortably with its Jewish element, its small Jewish element. But once all these European Jews start showing up, it just it just was clear there was going to be a disaster, and it's just been this inexorable purge of, I hate the term ethnic cleansing. It's just too nice, for what's going on there. And, so yes, I'm a very hardcore supporter of the Palestinian people. And I must say that I'm informed almost entirely by the Jewish activists that are leading the pro-Palestinian fight. And I could list off, whole lists of great commentary that by which I get my information. And it is, in many cases, Jews that are leading the pro-Palestinian fight. So lest I be accused of being an anti-Semite or something like that, that is not the case, including here in Canada. I used to have contempt for the husband of Naomi Klein. I forget his name right now, but he's doing great work in the academic sphere, as is Naomi Klein has been quite incredibly outspoken. And then, Medea Benjamin and Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and his dad, Dr. Gabor Mate. These are all the people that I follow. Katie Halper, the list goes on and on. And
and all of these people you just mentioned will never ever get a mention anywhere in the big media.
Yeah,
right? And that's something that Canadians should really wonder about. Why only one side of the story is ever allowed to be told on this issue and so many others.
Absolutely. Like when you have CBC, it's controlled by the Zionist lobby, just like the Canadian government and the American government. Like, that's the other thing. I was in Victoria actually during the election campaign, the last BC election campaign, and we were going for a walk through Cook Street Village, and I saw the David Eby bus pull up, and they were going into a rally at some venue right in Cook Street Village there. And just as we were going by the bus, out steps all 6'8" of David Eby out of the bus. And I just blasted him. Something, anything, say something, use your power to advocate for the people of Palestine. Like, we've not heard a peep from David Eby, except for, the usual, rhetoric about October 7th and stuff. He's obviously bought by the Zionist lobby, just like every politician in Canada.
You can't, there are certain things that you cannot say as a Canadian politician.
Yeah.
Positions on COVID, for example, positions on Russia or China, and positions on Palestine. If you want to maintain your career, there's lots of stuff you can't do.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing you mentioned about COVID. Now, as far as I can gather from, just, my wanderings around the internet, and even on CBC, it has been pretty much officially acknowledged that COVID was not brought on by eating bat soup, that in fact it was a laboratory release. Now, if that is the case, and I watched like the congressional hearings with Dr. Fauci and all that sort of thing, and it's pretty much clear. And even CBC, I heard this on CBC. I can't quote the exact show, but it's become part of the so-called official narrative that, yes, in fact, they've been able to trace the DNA and whatever gain of function and all that sort of thing to find that it's been tampered with and it was actually a lab release. So that begs the question now, if this was a lab release, was it deliberate or was it an accident? And that's what we need to know. And if it was either of those things, then you have to question all of the official narratives, including like 9/11 and, you know, everything that we're told in the official narrative, like the Nord Stream pipeline, that, you know, a bunch of hippies went out in a 50-foot sailboat, dove down 200 feet to the bottom of the Baltic Sea, were able to place, you know, with sat diving equipment and mixed gas tanks and go down there and plant 4 separate bombs and then swim back up 200 feet to their 50-foot sailboat and sail off, when meanwhile, just, you know, a few months previous, we had the American Navy in the Baltic Sea with all its NATO buddies in there conducting war games. You know, I mean, and we're still that's still the official narrative that these hippies from Ukraine went and did it. You know, and we're expected to believe that. Nobody's questioning it. You know, come on. Biden himself was like, yeah, we're going to blow it up. You know. It's not even, you know, debated, you know.
And neither is 9/11 debated. It's not allowed to be questioned in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Ingmar, I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, well, there was the raw logs things, but you were talking about a 15-minute interview. So
Yeah. Thank you so much.